Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And at long last, I am coming to you all with my top 15 favorite films of 2022. Now, this was not my original plan. I was going to do a top 10 with maybe a couple of honorable mentions. And then when I looked at my list, I realized it was like 5 honorable mentions, and I was having difficulty trying to just categorize it the right way. So I was like, you know what? Obviously, I saw a lot of films that I enjoyed and appreciated, so let's just put it at 15 and call it a day. And yes, I did say favorite and not best because I find that with that word, it just seems to carry a lot of weight and esteem, and there's a lot of pressure that comes along with that. Plus, I feel like my experience with film really extends beyond technical quality. Yes, we can discuss those things and it is important, but I also think there's something to be said about how a film resonates with you, like deep down, and it doesn't have to be a meticulously crafted, perfect film technically to really hit you in a certain place. So for me, when I think about certain films, I think about, did it make me laugh? Did it make me cry? Did it make me, pontificate? And did it really just stay with me and just resonate in unexpected ways? So with that, I really do try to be cognizant of how I qualify certain films because I find that it's really easy to put what is considered cinema in a box. And while I understand that side of things, it also can come off as gatekeeping. And I just don't want to be the person to do that. And it's not reflective of what my experience has been with cinema and with film over the years. So instead of doing honorable mentions, like I said, we'll just start with number 15. And that is The School for Good and Evil, directed by Paul Feig. Let me go ahead and say that I am very shocked that this has made my list because although I was intrigued by the idea of this when I saw the first production shot of Kerry Washington in her costume, as time went on, it really started to feel like it was going to be this Disney Channel-esque Harry Potter ripoff type of film filled with teen angst, which, as some of you may know, is not my thing. I can't really get into it. But lo and behold, I actually really enjoyed this film. And I think a big part of what made it work for me was the enjoyable performances and casting of actors and actresses like Kerry Washington, Charlize Theron, Lawrence Fishburne, and Michelle Yeoh. And then on top of that, I thought the effects, the story, just it having more depth than I expected it to. I thought this was going to be something a little bit more surface, but I actually felt like it had something to say, even if it is something we've seen before. Plus, I thought Sophia Wiley's performance as Agatha, her performance really is what kept me invested in this because I was really rooting for her character and I just felt like there was such a resonance in her performance, like emotionally, and I really clicked with her character. So from then on, I was like, okay, I just want to see what's going on with Agatha and what she has going on. I do think that book lovers, fans of the original book series are obviously not going to like this. We know how that goes, right? Like, this is nothing new. So I think those people will obviously not enjoy this. But as someone who knew nothing about this, this franchise or just, these stories in this universe, I was actually really tuned in, really locked in, and I would actually be here to see future installments. At number 14, we have Vengeance, directed by BJ Novak. You guys can check my review for deeper thoughts on this one, but I really appreciated this as BJ Novak's directorial debut. I appreciated the writing and the story. And there was something really refreshing and entertaining about the way this played out. And I appreciated how it was able to incorporate elements that we've seen before, but in a very memorable and distinctive way. At number 13, we have Pearl, directed by Ty West. I will be very honest, I know I'm in the minority, but I did not really enjoy X. I appreciated what it was trying to do as far as tying into the slasher genre, going back to the 70s. Like, there were elements of it I really enjoyed. I got it, but to me, it just never really felt as distinctive as it could have. I felt like it was so referential that it never felt like its own thing. I thought there was a really great moment with a certain kill in front of the car and the lights changing. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, give me more. But then it didn't give me more. So it just, to me, it never had that same kind of unique brilliance that that scene had. And the rest of it was just kind of like, okay, I feel like I've seen this before. A couple of moments that were fine, but it never felt like, yes. And that was disappointing. So what I appreciate about Pearl is that not only is it a prequel, which I always enjoy because I love a backstory, but I love the setting. I love that we are getting this very odd and off-putting Technicolor, bright 1920s vibe to this. And of course, Mia Goth's performance as Pearl is just like knocking it out of the park on so many levels. The way she just pulls so much emotion and rage and intensity out of herself and fueling it into this character, like, it is beyond words. I love the fact that it was more of a character study. And even with the issues I had with X as a film, this film actually made me appreciate that one a lot more than I did before. And at number 12, we have Watcher, directed by Chloe Okuno. I actually remember when this popped up at the 2022 Sundance Film Festival, but there are only but so many films you can watch and pay for because, yeah, that's a that's a hefty price tag if you keep on buying tickets to certain films. So it wasn't until much, much later that some of my YouTube pals were reviewing it and they didn't enjoy it. So I was kind of like, okay, well, whatever. And then late one night, I was scrolling through my Fire Stick and I saw it pop up on Video on Demand. I was like, oh, there's that film. And I don't know, something about it kind of intrigued me. So I was like, let me just give this one a shot. And I have to say, it really took me by surprise. I love the fact that it was another redux as far as Rear Window, which is a film I love immensely. I like the exploration of someone being stuck in a city where the language is not English, it's Romanian, and just trying to adjust and kind of being out of sorts and disoriented, and then seeing something happen that no one believes, that no one understands, and she has to kind of work through what's going on in her mind. Like, is this just my nerves? Is this just my mind playing tricks on me? Or is there something going on? And man, it really got intense. I kind of thought it was going to be more of a slow burn, which it kind of was, but I'm gonna tell you right now, there was a moment where a character is waiting for the elevator, and then out of the corner of their eye, they see something, and when I tell you my blood went cold, my hair stood up by itself, I was like, whoa. And it was late at night, so I was kind of like, okay. This may have been a mistake. But yes, I thought this was very underrated and I really loved its execution as a foreign psychological thriller. At number 11, we have Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, directed by Dean Fleischer Camp. I have to say, I didn't know anything about this character prior to the film, but I just thought that this was such a unique and heartfelt story. I loved seeing what a labor of love it was once I understood the backstory with Jenny Slade and how the character came to be. There were a lot of times where I was tearing up and it really hit some places that I was not expecting it to. I realize it's not a typical animated film. It is distributed by A24 and it doesn't have all the sparkle and pizzazz of a lot of animated films that we got in 2022. But I think there is something so charming, so whimsical, and so poignant about the story that it is telling, especially when it comes to the themes of family, identity, and community. Up next at number 10, we have You Won't Be Alone, directed by Goran Stolevsky. This was another one that popped up at the Sundance Film Festival that I got a ticket for, and whoa. I did not realize how much of a chord it would strike with me, but it did. It really brings to mind films like Meet Joe Black, and it also brought to mind the character Claudia from the film Interview with the Vampire. There are these supernatural figures who have to navigate life, recognizing what they lack as far as humanity and what they don't understand about life, about loss, and love in the human experience. This is a foreign film in the Macedonian language, and it is very much what some might consider to be elevated horror. But I really feel that it has so much to say. And once I got to the end of the film, I was very, very appreciative of the journey that this film took me on. Up next, at number 9, we have The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. There's not really much I can say that hasn't already been said, but I can absolutely say, and I've said it plenty of times, that as someone who grew up with Batman being my introduction to superheroes, with Batman Returns, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and Batman the Animated Series, I will always have an appreciation for that character and that world. But I was really worried that this was going to feel like another rehash, just another reboot. You know, DC has had a whole lot going on, so I was just like, okay, can we at least just get something that's halfway decent? Like, I will take that and be okay with it, but please, let's get it together. And I have to say that Matt Reeves knocked it out of the park. Like, man, there were just so many quality elements of this film. The cinematography and visuals, the cast, the action sequences, the emphasis on mystery and noir, and the whole detective side of things. It really does give me a lot of hope for how we can expand with this vision of Gotham and all these really interesting and unique figures within it. Because with this foundation, I can only imagine where we're going to go from here. I mean, Court of Owls, anyone? At number 8, we have The Banshees of Inisherin, written and directed by Martin McDonagh. There are just certain films where I get a good feeling about it when I hear about the cast and crew and we just kind of go on from there, and then I see the trailer and I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. And those initial thoughts are confirmed. That was how I felt about this film. I love a dark comedy. I loved all the layers of the story regarding friendship and age and time and how life and your perspective of life can really change how you view your friendships and relationships with other people. Something I can absolutely relate to. The performances were excellent across the board. Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and Kerry Condon, who I was especially happy to see because I've been a fan of hers since her role as Octavia in the 2005 HBO series Rome, which is one of my favorite series of all time. So to go from that experience all those years ago and then to see her still going strong and not only giving a great performance, but receiving nominations and awards for that performance, man, I was so proud and I was so happy for her. And then as far as Ireland, these locations, the scenery, like I was completely mesmerized. And you know, Ireland is already on my bucket list, but like I was so ready to take a trip as soon as I saw this film. At number 7, we have Good Luck to You, Leo Grand, directed by Sophie Hyde. This is another one that I saw at the 2022 Sundance Film Festival. I remember looking at the description and I was like, Emma Thompson is in this? You know, I'm like, the premise was one thing, but just her being the star, I'm like, okay, I think I gotta check that out. But it was so far beyond whatever expectation I might have had. I think there is something so layered and refreshing and insightful about the way this film approaches intimacy and romance and sexuality, companionship, aging, repression, fulfillment, and so much more. Even when I think about what the word intimacy means to me, I have had a lot of intimacy in a lot of relationships that I've had with other people, and we certainly were not jumping in the bed together. So I like that this film gave that perspective and it allowed us to look beyond what we perceive as intimacy and how people relate to each other, inside and outside of the bedroom. What also really brought this together for me was Daryl McCormack's performance. I also enjoyed that because I thought it was such a subversion of what we might see regarding that type of character. I was probably expecting something a bit more stereotypical, you know, the whole, if the bedroom's rocking, don't come knocking, you know, but this was not that. Again, there were so many layers to that character and what we come to understand about the profession and why he's in it and what his job really entails. Yes, you would think one thing, but there's so much more about what his presence would mean to other people. It's not just what you think. And I love how they really explore the dynamics of why someone would seek out his services. And like I said, it's so much deeper than that first thing your mind would go to. This is very much a chamber piece. So this is one location with continuous dialogue. But if there was ever a film to make me realize that I am totally here for that type of film, it was this one. And at number 6, we have Hatching, directed by Hannah Bergholm. Hatching is another 2022 Sundance Film Festival selection. So it's funny how I saw these films so long ago and that they're ending up on my list. But for a lot of them, I'm really not surprised. When I was going through my selection for the tickets, I just saw this picture of the egg and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to check this one out. I really do appreciate foreign horror. And although this is not really a hot take, I think it's very much superior to American horror. Look, just gotta call a spade a spade. But what makes it interesting to me is that we are seeing certain stories being told from a very unique cultural perspective. What also adds to that is that I grew up reading all types of horror stories, and some of those stories were, through folklore. And so they came from all these different parts of the world. So being able to see a finished horror story and it giving this insight of that culture and giving me a new perspective as far as foreign horror, I was totally into it. What really makes Hatching work for me is how its themes resonate far beyond whatever is in that egg. What it says about the dynamics of family and parenting, and how ultimately certain constraints and a certain structure as far as painting the perfect picture of what family is supposed to be, how that can ultimately undermine and ultimately destroy what a family is actually supposed to be. Plus, I love me some practical effects. So once the egg actually did hatch and I saw what was underneath, I was like, yeah, I definitely made the right choice here. Now at number 5, we have Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, directed by Anthony Fabian. There's a lot I appreciate about this film, but we have to start with the spectacular costume design. If you don't know, then I'll go ahead and tell you that I am an absolute sucker for great costume design. And the costumes in this film, the sequences where you saw like these gowns and these ensembles, I was like, it was sensory overload. I felt like I needed a cigarette afterwards. I was like, whoo! We have an excellent performance from Leslie Manville, who I've been a fan of since the Hulu series Harlots, and her role as a really great antagonist. And of course, this is a 180 from that, but she really shined and brought so much of this film together, along with a really great ensemble cast. But what I especially love about this film is how it speaks to the adventures you can still have in life, even when you feel like your life is over. There are so many things that we encounter in life. There are so many things that suddenly spring up. And there are moments where we just feel like, hey, this is my peak. I'm done. My best days are behind me. Like, this is the end of the road. And seeing Mrs. Harris go through this journey was a personal reminder to me that there's still so much more to be seen. Greater things are yet to come. Greater things are still to be done. There's still value left in me. There's still value left in my life. And I can still go out and have adventures. And life can still be a journey, even though I feel like I've gotten off track or there have been a lot of really unexpected roadblocks. I can go to this country. I can do all these things I've never done before. I can do all the things, right? And recognizing that no matter what this circumstance is or was, this is not the end of me. This is the beginning. And at number 4, we have Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Again, not a lot to say about this one that hasn't already been said, but I would like to point out how the response to this film has changed drastically now that it has become an Oscar darling. I think this is now one of those films that, because it has run the Oscar gambit and it has received almost universal acclaim and people just love it, love it, love it, I think a lot of people are just like, I just think there's something about outside chatter and buzz that can just really ruin a film for a lot of people. Even if they thought it was good or even just okay to begin with, all of that, yeah, people don't respond well to that. So I'm really curious to know what the response would have been if this had remained a hidden gem, an underrated film, and didn't get nearly as much acclaim or just as much celebration as it is now. Granted, some people just didn't like it to begin with, and that's fine. But I just wanted to point out that I think that's contributing to the response to this film now. And yeah, I see it. However, for me, I went in with low expectations because I saw that trailer and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I love Michelle Yeoh, but I don't know what all this is. So I went to go see it, but my expectations were like, here. I also went in having heard nothing else about it. There were no reviews. I didn't hear a lot of, anything. So the impact it ended up having on me was very surprising. And although it is as ridiculous and zany and over the top as I thought it would be, it also had some depth to it and some heart that I was not expecting. And just the way it travels through so many different genres, how it just, is an explosion of so many different themes and ideas and concepts. I just think it was something that I couldn't help but love. Now, I will say, having seen it more than once, I see more of the flaws now, and I think that can happen with any film. Some of those sequences are really stretched out, like the whole staircase situation. And some of it really is just a hodgepodge of foolishness. Hot dog fingers, anyone? But underneath all of that, it really hit home in a way I did not expect. And it was something I was able to relate to as far as my own life and my experience with my parents and how impactful that was for me and still is today. Ultimately, I can only speak to my experience. And I think that Everything, Everywhere, All at Once lives up to its title in so many ways. At number 3, we have RRR, aka Rise, Roar, Revolt, directed by S.S. Rajamouli. Again, I am a huge foreign film fan, and whenever a film can give me an insight into the dynamics of a certain culture, and even just like a certain film industry, I'm always here for that and I really appreciate it. And it was really important because I hadn't had the chance to really tap into Indian cinema the way I had wanted to. I didn't have the right recommendations and I was like, where do I start? So having this as my first big kind of Indian cinema experience was huge. And even more so because this is a product of Tollywood, aka Telugu cinema. Which, for clarification, is not the same thing as Bollywood. Man, if this was not a blast from start to finish, like, I don't know what else to say. When it started, I was kind of like, okay, like, I don't really know where this is going. Something about this seems kind of over the top and kind of odd. So, I'm hanging in there, but I don't know. But what a journey this film took me on. And I have to say, I really, really loved how this film portrayed brotherhood and friendship and a certain level of intimacy, like I mentioned before, in a friendship between two men that we don't always get a chance to see. And I'm not gonna lie, I was low-key envious. I was kind of like, wait a minute, like, where is my dynamic duo? Like, where?
Where are they?
I loved how in your face and over the top it was with the action sequences and just all of the hullabaloo going on. It was like bananas for sure. And I think that because it's not something that is rooted in realism, it's not going to click with some people. And I have moments like that, but there are just some times where I love getting swept up in, the foolishness and just kind of just the fun and the spectacle of it all. And that's absolutely what RRR did for me. And it goes without saying that Natu is a certified bop. The way that song had me like hopping up out my seat, like, yes. At number 2, we have Top Gun Maverick, directed by Joseph Kosinski. This is another one where the acclaim and its success really does speak for itself. This is a 36, yes, 36-year-old sequel. And I think a lot of people would agree that it is a sequel that is very much superior to the first film. One thing I actually appreciated is that it didn't really require you to have had the experience of the Top Gun to appreciate it. I feel like I didn't really miss out. I wouldn't mind watching the first one, although a lot of people, appreciate aspects of it. It definitely is a staple as far as its time and making its mark in the 80s. But I just think there is something so like so surprising about how it incorporates so many elements of that first film, but incorporates so many new elements and what it does with the story. Again, heart, the emotions and the emotional layers, the unimaginable way in which it was filmed. Like, if you know anything about the behind the scenes process, there was work that is put into this. And I am someone, especially as a movie connoisseur, someone who really appreciates film, what I appreciate most is seeing like what goes into it. It's very fun to watch a film, right? But when you see like what was invested, the time, the energy, the resources, this is a film that reflects all of that. Like, there's nothing that you can really say was subpar, or inferior. Like, it all came together in such a shockingly impactful way. And by doing that, they made a sequel that basically blew everyone out of the water and replicated a type of experience in the cinemas that we don't always get to see. And then, as someone who knows nothing about the Navy, who has no attachments or understanding of it, I love that this film did a great job in fleshing that world out and bringing me into it, giving me all this knowledge I didn't have about it, and then just adding to the respect I might have already had. Like, I knew, you think of the Navy, you're like, oh yeah, the Navy, that's awesome. We appreciate their contributions, but this brought me into it. And so it gave me a level of understanding and appreciation that I didn't have before that adds to the respect. Now it's like I get all of this now. And man, I think that the box office, the acclaim, everything that Top Gun Maverick has achieved, I think that says it all. And now at number 1, we have a film that really shouldn't be a surprise. Like, if you look at the title of the review I did for it, it was already on track, to be on my end of year list. That film is none other than The Outfit, directed by Graham Moore. Since the first time I saw it, this film never left my brain. It never left my mind. I just knew it was going to fall somewhere on here. And I think that there is so much to love and appreciate about it. Ironically, it's similar to Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris in that the lead character is someone much older. And of course, I appreciate narratives that are based around older people because we know how Hollywood is. So that in itself is refreshing. But we also have an actor in the lead who is someone I was already a fan of. I've been a fan of Mark Rylance since The Other Boleyn Girl, which was also very impactful as far as my appreciation of the Tudor dynasty. But as far as the film is concerned, the twists, the turns, the shocking development throughout, man, it's just, there was something so quiet but effective about the way the film plays out. There are so many impeccable aspects of it, from its costume to the performances and casting and even the set design. I also loved how it was also a chamber piece of sorts. It moved a little bit differently from your usual chamber piece, but we had the one location, we had these conversations, and man, just the anxiety and the tension I felt throughout, it kept me so invested. And just the way the film builds, and, figuratively or literally explodes at the end, I have not been able to forget it. I love that this quiet, small, just straightforward and simple film. I love the impact that it has, but it does it without all the flash and panache of films like Top Gun Maverick and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, those are cool, but this is doing so much of that without all of, this noise and this spectacle, but it still is effective in that same way. It was a next level experience for me, and I'm also glad that I was able to pass this along to my friends in real life because they actually went to go see it and they were like, oh my gosh, thank you for putting me on to this one because I probably wouldn't have known anything about it, wouldn't have gone to see it. And I'm hoping to do more of that going forward because although I do appreciate mainstream films, that's totally fine. It is always the hidden gems that hit me a certain way. I don't know, it's something about the way that they stand out. And I think because a lot of times they're smaller films with these smaller narratives, there's just something about how those kind of stories can just pack a big punch. And the outfit packed a big punch for me. And there is no other film I could think of to put as my number one of 2022, but the outfit. All right, so that wraps up my long overdue list of my favorite films of 2022. Please feel free to comment and leave your thoughts and let me know what you think. Like, are there any films that you agreed with? Are there any films you disagreed with, weren't the biggest fan of, or actually loved, or haven't had the chance to see? And if some of you end up checking some of these films out, please let me know and share your thoughts as well. I think that 2022 was a great year for me, and to have had 15 films on here, and it's gonna be fun editing this one down, but I just had to go for it and just really show my appreciation for what has been a very, very dynamic year in film and cinema. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.